I want to thank the leaders of Grassroots Democrats HQ, so you know who we are, and you can thank us as well. Like I said, I am President Melissa Grant. Brian Colker is our CFO and our speaker tonight.
Hello.
Tamara Melzer-Levinson, our Executive Director. Ingrid Van Eckart is our events coordinator. I don't think Ingrid's here tonight. Mana Shushtari is our executive strategist. Where are you, Mana? Oh, there you are. And then we have Davis Hahn, who's our senior strategist. There's Davis. We have Barry Rosenbaum, who's our senior staff and affiliates coordinator. He's not here tonight. Andy Linden, our recruitment coordinator. Eve Levinson, our national youth advisor. We have Bridget Matthews, an organizer, and Sydney. What is your last name again, Sydney?
Sydney Stern.
Sydney Stern, our fantastic organizer. Please give everybody a big hand. We work really hard to make this all happen. Okay, let's get the shoe on the road. So I'm going to introduce to you Brian Colker again, our CFO and our AI expert extraordinaire. Brian, take it over.
Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. Let me get my presentation working here.
Come on, I said you're the science guy extraordinaire. What's going on here?
I'm just getting things set up, Melissa. Assuming everyone can see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right, great. So let me tell you, this is going to be about 20 minutes. So here's the agenda. So first I'm going to talk about what AI is briefly, I should say, and then talk about why should we care about it as democratic grassroots people? Who cares? What can AI do right now to impact electoral politics? And then where do I think it's going over the next near term, like next 2 to 3 years? I'm actually going to show you ChatGPT live. I'll do a couple things with that, just in case you haven't seen it. And then I did a mock-up of Will Rollins. I hope you know who Will Rollins is. He's running for CA41, of what a future Will Rollins website could actually look like using a chatbot. Then I'm going to hit on the potentially negative future of AI in politics, which I think a lot of people have focused on the risk, rightly. But I'm going to end with a glasses half full perspective. So let me get into it. And by the way, I think as you have, if you have questions, please just put them in the chat, and I'll do some Q&A after the presentation. Okay. All right, here we go. So let's start with what it is. So AI, first of all, it's been around for several years now. So if anybody here uses Netflix, you're using AI, because that's what is behind Netflix serving up suggestions to you. It has AI in the background doing that. So that kind of AI can just identify and classify data that you provide. It doesn't talk to you. It doesn't use there's no natural language behind it. So a newer generation is called generative AI, and these are much smarter and more useful. And so these can talk to you, basically can simulate English language. So if you ask it a question, it can respond in English or some version of it. And when you talk to it, those are known as prompts, just so you know. Okay, so now a little bit of 3-letter acronyms. Large language model, of which ChatGPT is one, is a kind of generative AI that's been trained. So think of taking the Library of Congress, not quite that big, and then taking a generative AI and saying, learn all this. And so what it can do is it can draw inference when you ask it questions based on that body of knowledge that you've already trained it on. So if you've heard of ChatGPT by OpenAI, that is an example of an LLM. Google is, if it hasn't launched already, it's very close to launching something called Bard, which is Google's AI. Microsoft's AI is right on its heels. So I'll just give you the how large language model AI is supposed to work very, very quickly. So let's say you want to learn volleyball. So you go to the gym and say, I'm going to spend 3 hours learning the rules of the game. I'm going to, become familiar with the volleyball, how it works, the leather part, the nets, the whole thing. So you spend 3 hours doing that. And then you say, you know what? I actually want to learn to play basketball on the court next door. So the idea is, of course, volleyball and basketball are not the same, but they both involve balls. You have to bounce them. They're on courts. They involve nets. So there's similarities enough that the idea is, because you've been training on volleyball, you're going to be a little bit farther ahead and going to be able to understand basketball just a little bit faster. So think of that times 1 trillion, and you'll get how large language model AI works, right? So they just take bits of information, and using inference, they can kind of mimic human language or human response based on that data. Okay, so what? Why do you care about this? Well, unfortunately, AI is here. It's not even the future. It's actually the present. But in my mind, there is going to be a race between Democrats and Republicans, and really more urgently between people who believe in American democracy and people who don't, to use it effectively. And I would say emphatically, people in the Democratic Party, people who care about democracy, cannot cede AI to fascists, neo-fascists, otherwise known as Republicans or neo-Confederates, however you want to say it. We cannot cede this technology. It is too powerful. It's too all-encompassing. So it is incumbent upon us to learn these tools and to start understanding them, because we will be completely outmanned and outgunned if we allow the unethical right to basically own this technology. Okay, so what can it do today? Well, as of right now, so it's the current AI is very good at analyzing information and data, and then providing some kind of summary in English. So you can already use AI to do fairly sophisticated analyses of voter data and things like that. And it can also reorganize complex information to make it easy to understand. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of it live now. Okay, can you, let me just ask, can you see a ChatGPT browser, or do I need to share my screen again? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes, we can see that. Yes.
So I'm going to pretend I am working on a campaign, and I need to issue a statement about something that has occurred, an issue, something like that. Somebody put something in the chat of a particular thing that a candidate would have to make a statement about, whether it's a shooting or an immigration incident or just any topical issue. Abortion. Okay. So I just say I'm a campaign manager, and I need to make a statement about the 1-year anniversary of Roe v. Wade being made illegal. Okay. So as you can see, it is pumping out a generic campaign statement, and it's even calling this reproductive rights, even though I didn't say reproductive rights. Okay. So as we mark the 1-year anniversary of Roe v. Wade being overturned, blah, blah, blah. So I might think, you know what, this is kind of long. So I'll say, can you make that shorter and emphasize reproductive justice? Okay, so hopefully you're getting the gist of what it can do. So it basically it knows enough about what a what sort of what a candidate would issue as a statement, enough to kind of simulate what it should look like. And then you can just keep refining it. You can make it shorter, you can make it less complicated and things like that. So that's the kind of thing it can do today, but it also can do other things that are interesting. So so let's say, let's switch to campaign finance. So let's, I'm starting a PAC to support candidates. Can you give me a summary presentation of the FEC rules I need to follow? Okay, so as you can see, what it's doing is basically what it knows about federal election law. It's coming up with a fairly simple PowerPoint conversation or a presentation about the applicable laws and regulations. So it can do this today. Now, would you rely on this when you started a PAC? No, probably not. But it gives you a sense of what this technology, and keep in mind, ChatGPT has been available for now 9 months. That's it. So anyway, so I'll go back to this, but I just wanted to give you sort of a sense of the flavor of it. So next thing I want to talk about is chatbots. So a chatbot is essentially like a little app that acts like a person that you train on a large document or piece of text, and you can ask it questions. So what I did, for example, is I took the Inflation Reduction Act. You remember Biden's big signature piece of legislation, and created a chatbot based on that. And this is just an example of a couple of questions you could ask. So you'd ask it, so how's corporate tax reform addressed? How's the corporate alternative minimum tax calculated? So all this does is basically take really complicated things and be able to explain them in very simple language. And you can keep refining the answer. You can say, okay, tell me on what page that occurred, or say, I still don't understand. Explain it to me like I'm in 3rd grade. And a chatbot can do that. So that's what it can do today. So now what's it going to be able to do in the future? Well, it's not hard to see that AI is going to have the capacity to do automated text and calls to voters. It's going to be able to do individual mass emails to voters. So it's, if you have a list of voters, it should be able to look up who they've donated to and what their issues are, and we'll be able to custom make those emails that are so generic now, it'll be able to be customized. Now, I very much doubt that the FCC will allow AIs to directly reach out to voters, but it's certainly going to have the capacity to be able to do it. The other thing AI it can do today, but it's going to be able to do much more in the near future, is real-time sentiment analysis on social media. So if you have an AI that's looking at, if you're, again, if I want to use the Will Rollins example, which I'll show you in a second, Will Rollins could issue a statement about, his position on reproductive rights or something like that. And AIs are going to be able to tell him very, very quickly, tell his campaign, is this being viewed positively or negatively? What kind of people are retweeting this? How is it impacting people? So that kind of thing is going to, picture that turned up to an 11, and that's what's going to be happening in terms of sentiment analysis. The other thing it can do I would say on the citizen side, is be able to create for us a slate of candidates based on where we live and who we're eligible to vote for on any criteria you want. Their campaign finance, who's been donating to them, what issues they're taking, and things like that. Because things like the donor databases, which of course are public, AIs are going to be trained on that, and they're going to be able to give you a tremendous amount of information about the candidates who are running for office. So let's see what I think a chatbot will be able to do for example, for a campaign website. So let's say this is Will Rollins running for re-election in 2026, because I don't think he could do this next year, but who knows? So if you go to the website, you're just going to see this this chatbot that's essentially saying, hey, why are you here? And I'll give you some examples of how it could work. So let's start with, well, you know, if you type in, where can I volunteer this weekend? It can say, hey, look, the Grassroots Democrats HQ has a postcarding group. Based on your, you know, if you enter your address, I can tell you if you're close to it or not. And again, it could keep giving you more information. It could contact the person who's organizing the postcarding group, et cetera, et cetera. If the voter has questions about whether they're eligible, if they're not registered, the chatbot will be able to walk them through voter registration and things like that. But it also, you know, in terms of getting into a candidate's position on a particular issue, you know, you could theoretically train the chatbot to be able to have some version of conversations with voters about their positions on things. Now, obviously, with a huge amount of caution in terms of, you know, to what extent you want a chatbot talking about reproductive rights or with single payer health or things like that. But it's really going to be able to do that fairly well within a couple of years. The other thing it's going to be able to do is give you a tremendous amount of information about the election itself. When is it? When are ballots being mailed? The chatbot can be able to set up things like reminders for voters. It can say, look, 2 days before the election, I'll text you and tell you where your polling place is. It's going to be able to do things like that. Okay, so other things that I think is pretty close to being able to do for those of us who are doing a lot of grassroots events, think of ChatGPT and things like that, being able to do things like formatting a fundraiser invitation as an email template, being able to go out to Act Blue, find a name of donors in the local area who seem like they'd be amenable to this kind of event. It can do automated texting to people who haven't RSVP'd. So those of us who have done all these things before can see the amount of labor that it will probably be able to save in terms of follow-ups, thank you notes, suggestions for future events, and things like that. So for those of us who are organizing, these tools are going to be incredibly helpful. Okay, so as I'm sure you're aware, there's a very significant potential dark side to this, which is, you know, AI could automate behavior targeting, manipulating on the mass scale. So since AI has the capacity to individually monitor or contact millions of voters, you could see it doing some fairly nefarious things, like generating images, disturbing images or languages that are attributed to a candidate to either try to convince people not to vote or to vote for somebody else. Because AI is going to be very good to do things like sentiment analysis, it's going to be able to test messages very, very rapidly on voters and be able to come up with very finely tuned messages to engage or disengage voters. So that has the capacity to do very bad things. I mean, if we thought that 2016, some of the manipulation that the Russians were doing that we know of, imagine that being ramped up by 10,000, and you'll get a sense of what people are worried about. It could also do things that are not necessarily political, like sending, you know, spamming someone, a group of voters with objectionable ads or just a ton of ads to be able to drown out, sort of creating this noise around campaigns that really turn people off. So, you know, the problem with AI, of course, is that it has no ethics, and as long as it literally follows the law, nothing's really off the table. So that's a definite fear. On the other hand, the glass is half full. Is that imagine a good citizen AI that sits on your browser and either filters out objectionable content or flags things like disinformation and misinformation. It warns you when there are, you know, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes or Lauren Boeberts, or really any Republican House member that opens their mouth, that something either extremist or not true is being said. So these good citizen AIs could really, they could kind of level the playing field by filtering out misinformation, and could hopefully have some kind of virtuous cycle that they start to encourage people to do it less and less. So the other thing is, imagining monitoring, reporting on dark money groups, providing just a lot of much easier to understand information on what Congress is doing in terms of explaining laws and things like that. So there's a lot that AI has the potential to do that could help democracy as well. And I would just leave off by saying, just reminding you that it's a big, beautiful world. So don't be too freaked out by AI. Okay. So I'm sure you might have some questions. Davis, are you going to lay them on me, or am I moderating my own questions, or what?
Well, it looks like we don't have any questions really in the chat right now, but if folks have questions, Brian would be happy to answer them. So please put them in the chat, and we're happy to devote a few minutes to having a bit of a conversation here.
I have a question, Brian.
Yes.
Could you ask AI to write a statement in the voice of a candidate?
Oh, for sure.
So it could sound like Trump, or it could sound like President Biden.
Yep.
Wow. That's frightening. That's frightening.
Yeah, I mean, the deepfake technology is already out there. So, I mean, part of the things that, in terms of kind of the dark side of AI is this incredible facility it's going to have to mimic and to, constantly fine tune a message in terms of coming up with things that are better and better.
Somebody put in the chat that AI passed the Maryland bar. What do you think of that? Yeah.
So here's a couple more questions. So here are two. I'm just going to give you two at the same time, and then you can figure out how to answer them. So one is Joey would like to know how can I create a chat bot now? And then your next question after that will be from Kristen Roberts. How do you recommend getting started with AI use? So you basically have people that are all interested in, wow, you just taught me something. How do I get started?
So to make chatbots are, it's growing so fast in terms of the capability to create it. So even 6 months ago, creating a chatbot was extremely labor intensive and very expensive. But OpenAI actually has you have to get, I think it's a monthly subscription. It's probably a few $100s a month, and then you can create any amount. I don't know if it's any amount, but you can start to create chatbots using OpenAI. So the technology is changing so fast. It's kind of mind-blowing, honestly.
Wow.
Sorry, what was the next question, Tamara?
And then, well, they were both about how do you get started. I asked them both because they were both similar. And then Ina Hildebrandt, by the way, hi Ina, wants to know, what about line by chat GPT?
Yeah, so that's one of the areas that they're developing as fast as they possibly can. So they use the term hallucinating. And with ChatGPT, you can set it when it answers questions to use, quote, creativity, or basically go beyond what it knows to make inferences. And you can either set it so that it goes way beyond making a lot of inference, or it tries to do it as little as possible. But the problem is, people were noting that when they were using it, that it was giving just flat out wrong answers to questions. Like it would just say, and they started calling that hallucination. I guess you could call it lying, call it whatever you want. So the next generations of these LLMs, what they're trying to do is get them to say, I don't know, rather than give out wrong information. So I would say that's a well-known, it's a well-known problem that's being worked on very, very rapidly by the big tech companies that have these LLMs available to the public.
There's been more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Dave has
question from Amber Buck. One question is, how can we advocate for or work towards good citizen AI, as you mentioned in your presentation, and help regulate this dark side you're talking about? One thing I'll just quickly say, Brian, before you dive into that one, as someone who in my day job, I work for a member of the California State Legislature, and they are considering a number of bills this year in response to the prevalence of ChatGPT to regulate the use of AI and the potential for disinformation and hate and all sorts of other things that could be generated by it. Just the most basic thing is you can do with any issue that you care about is make sure that you're in touch with your local representatives, let them know this is something that you're paying attention to, that you care about, and that you want them to take action on. So that's one thing that I can encourage you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, part of the reason that that I put this presentation together was really, it's around that good citizen AI concept, and basically using AI as a tool of democracy rather than something that's seen as completely a threat. So, I know, like, our representative, meaning for a lot of people in this room, is Ted Lieu, and Ted is all over this. And I think Congress is starting to, the Biden-Harris administration, I think, has just announced either a task force or a standard they're starting to work on. But I think our government has woken up to this. But this is why I feel so strongly that Democratic activists have to be pushing this as hard as possible. And this is being able to engage with the technology, coming up with asking good questions about how it's going to be used, how it's going to be regulated, and then starting to think creatively about uses, again, that will spread democracy or help democracy rather than hurt
it. Allison Ford, which I think you already answered the question, but I just want to make sure, said that this has been interesting, but what is the role of an ordinary activist in using AI? What could or should we do to make sure that our side benefits from that AI? So you kind of answered that, but I just want to make sure that it's fully been answered to the most extent that you can think of.
Yeah, I would say for sort of the ordinary activist, it's stay on top of this. Like, make sure you're educated about this, follow it, and make your opinion known in terms of things like regulation, making sure it's integrated into federal election law. I mean, this technology is emerging so rapidly that it begs for some level of control. It really does, because the big tech firms are notoriously bad about enforcing any kind of rules or ethics or constraints that's going to impact them financially. If anybody knows about the way they use our data, our personal data in the US, it's an absolute nightmare. In Europe they have it, but the privacy laws are far better. So if you use that as an analogy, I would say the Democrats in general have to push very, very hard for some kind of intelligent regulation of AI.
The mango, Judy.
I can't do no.
Huh?
I'm in a meeting. I told him to call me at 9.
Sorry, wait.
There
we go.
There we go. Great. Brian, did you get to finish? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Great. Davis, do you want to ask the next one?
Yes. So Ruben Hoyos was asking, how can AI be hacked by the opposition? Or how can it be utilized by the opposition in a negative way?
To call at 9 o'clock. She's in a meeting right now. Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, the AIs they can be used by anybody. So I'm not, I mean, you can use an AI to either sort of positively promote something or to negatively attack something, right? So I don't think it's a matter of, quote, your AI being against their AI. These are open tools, right? So I'm not sure how to address that question exactly.
I think maybe he's just touching on, what are some of the negative impacts that we could see from the other side mastering how to use this technology. Like
Mass manipulation is by far the biggest threat, by far.
And could it be used similarly to, because I mean, we saw the right learn how to master social media to spread disinformation over the last couple of elections.
That times 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, picture AI sending out mass communications to Democratic cities, giving them the wrong information about when elections are. I mean, they did that, people have done that already, but AI would be really, really good at it. Like, it would be able to send targeted messages that look like it's from the registrar of voters telling you that, like, you're not eligible to vote. I mean, there's endless ways it could manipulate and screw up our elections. Endless.
And I will say, at least here in California, I don't know necessarily about in other states. That's what lawmakers are worried about and are trying to get ahead of with some of the laws that are being, or bills that are being considered in this legislative session. Paul Scheer had a question. Is there any technology available right now that can reliably identify whether text is coming from AI as opposed to being generated by an actual human?
No. There's actually AI programs written to try to figure out if it's, I mean, teachers are using that, right, to figure out if papers have been written by AI or not, and they're not very good. I mean, some of them work because the kids that are using them aren't sophisticated enough to train the AIs to make it look like they wrote it. But generally speaking, even after 9 months, the AIs can produce output that most people can't tell is AI.
Okay, another question that I saw that we got is, do you see AI being used as a effective tool for fundraising, and how are some of the ways you think that it could be used in that way?
Well, I mean, the short answer is there's two ways I can see it working. One is providing really good analyses of big donor databases. Like if the big federal database that has all of our contributions, if that's ever, I don't know if you can actually access it from the back end, but AI could give you an incredible amount of information about who's donating, when they're donating. And AIs could correlate donations to different kind of events, time of day, time of week. I mean, it could provide a tremendous amount of information on sort of when and why people donate. So on the data sciences side, I can see it doing that really well. On the individual side, I think I talked about some of that in my presentation, which it can just make the whole process of fundraising much more frictionless, to use a business term, easier. And as I said, it's going to be able to do things like at a small level, like if you're having a fundraiser with, you're inviting 100 people, in terms of having an AI be able to easily, send messages for you, track donations, follow up on donations, and things like that.
So Brian, I think that we pretty much covered people's questions in the chat. Do you have anything in closure that you want to add in?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is an area that is evolving so fast. I mean, I'll just step back and say, so I've been an IT consultant since the late 90s. And what I've seen of these large language models is the most profound technology I've seen in my entire career. I mean, the only thing that comes close is the internet itself. So I think this will dwarf social media in terms of impact on pretty much every component of our society. So it's hard for me to overstate just how significant a technology this is. Utterly transformational. In 10 years, I think our culture and our economy are going to look very, very different because of AI. It's going to happen that fast. So I'll just leave you with that.
I want to thank you, Brian. When you raised this as the topic to be talked about, and we all thought, of course you should do this. I personally just learned a tremendous amount. I think the people in this group, if we all felt that way, I'd like everybody to put that into the chat as well. You gave a gestalt to us that was really informative for those of us who only know the basics and just are trying to figure out, how do I get it into my browser, to understanding what the real implications are, which, as you said, it's so vast, we can't even fully comprehend it. So if people have questions after this, how could they extend their questions to you if they want it? Because you are very prevalent on Facebook and are always willing to communicate with others. How do you want people to be communicating with you if they have other questions after?
I'll put my my email in the chat.
Fantastic.
There you go.
And I think that we might be doing one. Oh, Alec, we can't have that on. Sorry. I'm in the kitchen area and we have a noise in the background. So first of all, what I want to say is that we're doing happy hours once a month. And it could be that there are such interesting topics that might come up twice a month at times. So there might be another time. I think Brian will come back and speak to us again, but this was amazing. Before we transition to the rest of our program, I do just want to take a moment that everybody who is a Grassroots Democrats HQ fellow that happens to be in the room, I even saw some that were putting some questions into the chat. Just in the chat, just indicate and say, I'm a fellow, and where you're from, which city and state. The back end of the Grassroots Democrats HQ is not run by AI. It is run by human beings who are actually answering your questions, who are going through all of your emails, who deal with all of your text, who manage all of your postcard issues. And those are all the fellows from across the United States. So I just wanted to give them a huge shout out. They should wave their hands and let everybody know that they're actually here. We're going to pivot now to telling you what is happening at the Grassroots Democrats HQ, because the truth is that this AI situation is going to impact elections, but elections will still be managed by people. They will be impacted by all of this technology, but we're not going to win them by AI. We're not going to win them by fighting against AI, and we are going to win them by what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Davis Hahn, who's going to talk first about what is happening with the Virginia House of Delegates races, which is one of the areas that we're working on. Go ahead, Davis.
Well, thank you, Tamara. And it's so as Tamara mentioned, we've got a lot of electoral work that we're already deeply engaged in. I know folks tend to think of these odd numbered years as quote unquote off years. That's not something that we believe in as an organization. We know that first of all, to win the congressional races and restore our Democratic trifecta next year in 2024, that organizing needs to start in 2023. But we've also got some really important elections coming up in 2023 in the state of Virginia. So they have their state elections in odd numbered years. If you are a Grassroots DemHQ veteran volunteer, you probably have worked in Virginia with us before, either in 2021 or way back in 2019, right after we founded. But this year, all 140 seats of the Virginia General Assembly, that is the name of their state legislature, are going to be on the ballot in November of 2023. And right now, of course, we know Glenn Youngkin, the MAGA Trump apologist Republican who narrowly won the governorship in 2021. He is still the governor of the state. He will be for another 2 years. He is trying his best to implement a very hardline extremist right-wing agenda in Virginia. And the only thing stopping him right now is that Democrats hold a very slim 22 to 18 majority in the Virginia Senate. On the other side, Republicans have the smallest majorities in the House of Delegates. We had flipped the House of Delegates from Republican to Democrat in 2019. It flipped back from Democrat to Republican in 2021. But this year we have a really good opportunity to flip the chamber back into Democratic control. And that's because in 2021, Virginia voters passed a ballot initiative that created an independent Citizens Redistricting Commission in Virginia. And so after that initiative was passed, that commission had the task of redrawing all 140 state legislative districts in Virginia, and those are now going into effect in this election cycle. So without having any political influence on how those lines are drawn, what that means is that there are more competitive seats in both the Senate and in particular the House of Delegates than there have been at any point in the last 30 or 40 years in Virginia. And these are fairly small districts, especially on the House of Delegates side, meaning that when we're calling and we're talking to voters, those calls have a tremendous impact. There was actually a race back in 2017 that decided which party was going to control the House of Delegates for the next 2 years that ended in a tie. And they ended up, I believe, drawing a name out of a hat to determine not just the winner of that race, but which party was going to be in control. So this election is going to have broad implications for the next couple years. Reproductive freedom is on the ballot. If Republicans take back the Senate and keep the House of Delegates, they will ban abortion statewide in Virginia. Voting rights are on the ballot. LGBTQ rights are on the ballot, and possibly even control of the U.S. House are going to be at stake in the next election. There are quite a few swing House districts in Virginia, and if Republicans have total control of the government there, they can certainly pass voter suppression laws. They can pass some of the laws that we've been seeing in other Republican-controlled states that might undermine the counting and certification of votes in those elections. So there's so much at stake. We are already deeply involved working on these races, and I'm going to pass it back to Tamara, who's going to talk about some of the volunteer opportunities we have right now into Virginia.
So I do want to point out that the Grassroots Democrats HQ has been working in the House of Delegates since the 2000. I mistyped, so just ignore. I said, oh no, I didn't. I actually didn't put the wrong date. Thought the wrong date. In 2017 was the first House of Delegates race that the leadership of the Grassroots Democrats HQ was actually involved in. So we have done 2017, 2019, 2021, and now we're in 2023. We are currently running phone banks. The first one is weekly on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock Eastern time, and that is at 2 o'clock Pacific time. Pamela McAfee is the organizer who is hosting those phone banks. She happens to be in the Zoom room today. Pamela lives in North Carolina and came to working with the Grassroots Democrats HQ in her capacity when we were all volunteering and working together in the Virginia House of Delegates 2 years ago. We are so happy. She leads an incredible Zoom room. And we do have some of our fellows that are working with her to be assisting. Why am I telling you this? This is only the first phone bank that we are doing. We currently have phone bank links already for 3 of the House of Delegates races. I anticipate that we will be growing to approximately, I think it's going to be around 13 races to 15 races between the House of Delegates and the Senate, and it could grow from there. I want you to join these. We're going to put into the chat right now the link tree for the Grassroots Democrats HQ. And we're going to talk about that link tree again. So even if you don't get it the first time when we talk about it, we're going to talk about it again. The link tree is your way to click on that link, find the opportunity for volunteering that you want to do, and volunteer. The beginning thing that you can do for the Virginia races is to come on Wednesdays to our Virginia House of Delegates and Senate race phone banks. And we will be growing that to adding a weekend. And I'm sure that within the next month, we will be adding another weekday. If you're somebody who's thinking, gosh, Tamara, I don't want to be on a Zoom. I already know how to phone bank. Don't worry. On that link tree, you have what we call Phone Bank Now. Phone Bank Now is where you can click on that option, and then you can navigate yourself just over to our information libraries. So any of you who have phone banked with us before, don't worry. You can be doing all the phone banks alone at home, or better yet, at the end of this night, if you're someone who says, I want to start I'm in person now. I want to bring people around my kitchen table. I want to lead a phone bank myself. Let us know. So I've now talked to you about how you can engage on the Virginia House of Delegates, and stay tuned. In about 1 week, you will start to see postcards available as well. Danica Rome, who has been the first transgender member of a state legislature, is running this year to be in the Senate for the Virginia State Senate. That will be the first postcarding program that we are adding, and we hope to get it for most of our campaigns as well. I'm going to turn it now over to Mana Shushtari, who will be talking to you about our California races.
Hey folks, and Davis, if you want to chime in on this part, please do not hesitate to do so. So great to see everybody. So we all know, we all read the headlines after the 2022 midterms. We know for 2024, the pathway to 218 in the House is going to run through California. Many of the very decisive swing races, particularly flip races, are in California, throughout our Central Valley and through Southern California, where I happen to know that many of you are based in California. And so we're going to go over some volunteer opportunities, both in person, virtual, and that you can do on your own time to make sure that in 2024, we can surpass that 218 number and win the House of Representatives and take it back to make sure that we can support President Biden after he is reelected, of course, to implement that plan of building back better.
And the only thing I will add to that is why these volunteer opportunities are so important, even this early on, even before we know who the Democratic candidate in some of these races is going to be. Is there's a voter education piece that is really important. I like to refer to it as priming voters so they're ready to vote for Democrats by the time GOTV rolls around. A lot of the work that we're doing right now in these swing districts, particularly the ones that are represented by Republicans, is talking to independent voters, persuadable voters, and informing them about the extremist votes that members like Mike Garcia, for example, are taking in the House of Representatives when they vote to ban abortion nationwide, when they vote to overturn the results of the last presidential election. A lot of regular persuadable voters might not be aware that the person representing them in Congress is making those types of decisions that are very much out of line with their values. So a lot of the work that we're doing right now is informing voters about that. On the flip side, if a Democrat's representing them in Congress, we want to inform them about the great work that their member has been doing to bring resources back to the district, to fight for the values that they believe in. And when we do that voter information or voter education now, that means that when we're knocking on those doors and making those calls a year from now, we've hopefully already talked to that voter, and they've already started going down the path in their mind of, oh, this GOP representative who represents me does not stand for my values, or I actually really like what this Democratic Congress member who represents me is doing. And then they're going to be much more receptive to our efforts to make sure that they actually go to the polls and then cast that ballot for a Democratic candidate. With that being said, I'm going to toss it back to Tamara to talk about some of our current opportunities in our California House districts.
There is no shortage of actions that you can be taking here in California. You can do it in person or you can be doing it virtually. We will be doing work, and I hope that I get all of my districts correct. And if I forget one, I do apologize. But eventually we will have work that will be going all the way from Northern California, starting with the Josh Harder campaign, holding on to CA9. We'll be working to be taking and flipping CA13, which is in the central Northern California area. Go down to the Central Valley. We have CA22, where we want to get rid of Valadeo. 27 is just above Los Angeles. We want to get rid of Garcia. Moving down, when you get below or next to Los Angeles, you go over to CA41. That is the Palm Springs and Riverside area. We are non-candidate specific now, but Brian was already using Will Rollins as an example. He seems to be the leading candidate. Last time he lost by just a very small amount. Then we go down to Orange County. We're into CA45, CA47, CA 49. We're watching CA 40 as well. Why am I saying all these different districts? Because I only have actions, the Grassroots Democrats HQ. I can only talk about the ones that we currently have. So if you would like to come in person, Antelope Valley and CA 27, if you live in Los Angeles or anywhere in the surrounding areas, we will be doing a once a month canvas up in CA 27. We're knocking on doors and we're talking to voters, discussing with them what is happening with Mike Garcia and what is it that they believe in, so we can let them know that Mike Garcia, it comes naturally. What they want and what he's doing do not actually match. There's canvases that are already taking place to hold on to Mike Levin's seat down in CA 49. We have an incredible partnership with CBFD. Did I say that correctly, Mana? If I did not, you can correct me. It's an incredible group of volunteers that we have down there, and they are doing canvases a couple times a month. So you can be joining that. Then if you want to join us, you can jump onto a phone bank. Don't worry, if you don't live close, you can jump onto a phone bank. And we are already doing phone calls alongside the California Democratic Party, along with many other groups that we are collaborating with into CA 45. That will be an AAPI-led phone bank, because we know that in CA 45, the AAPI votes, the Asian Island Pacific Islander community, is going to be a leading piece of it. We're also partnering with Making Ways for Democracy. We will soon be uplifting canvassing and voter registration opportunities in the district of CA 47. That is where Katie Porter is currently a congressional member. She will be leaving that seat, so that leaves it to be an open seat. We want to be down there talking to voters as well, and we have an amazing partnership with Making Ways for Democracy and other groups that we are finding that want to go do door knocking down there. Let's flip to the next screen, because I want to show you another opportunity. Grassroots Democrats HQ during this off-year election cycle will be uplifting voter registration events. We're going to be doing that in all of these key districts that I just mentioned. And who's going to be leading them? Because what happens is everybody wants to do voter registration, but somebody has to be the first one stepping in and saying, hey, I'm here. I have the clipboards, I have the voter registration forms, and I can train you. The young Dems of the Grassroots Democrats HQ will be doing that. We already have started that with a group of young adults that went into CA 27. We are also having young adults that started during this last week. We've gone twice down to CA 47. Why am I telling you this? Because number one, if you would like to lead a voter registration drive, you haven't done it yet, you want to know more about it, let us know. We can hook you up in doing it. But if you're somebody who just wants to go out and you don't want to go alone, we are paying young adults right now. So why am I telling you that one? Because in a minute, I am going to be talking about fundraising, and I want you to understand how incredible this particular program is. We don't have enough people out on the ground with their feet on the ground. But you know who is willing to do it? Young adults that are college students and young adults who are seniors in high school. If people in high school that are younger than seniors want to join us, they can, but generally we're finding seniors and college age students are the ones that are going. Please join us in these voter registration events, and you'll see it on our link tree as well. Turning it back to you, Mana.
Thanks so much. All right. Now, Tamara, I believe you're joining me for some fundraising announcements, which are very.
And do you have the slides? Because you made a great slide for it, by the way.
Yes, I do. Just give me one moment. Sorry, folks. I have it all zoomed in because I wanted to make sure the sizing was correct. If you know me, I'm very nitpicky about how my graphics are made. All right. There we go. Thank you so much. All right. So our first event, in-person fundraiser for this summer, is going to be with Congressman Eric Swalwell. If you watch MSNBC, you definitely know Congressman Eric Swalwell. He is one of the leading Democrats in Congress, making sure that our messaging is getting out there. And of course, he's a champion for our democratic values, not just in California, but across the country. He is joining the Grassroots Democrats HQ on Saturday, August 19th in Santa Monica. And as Allison mentioned in the chat, yes, he's also fabulous on Twitter. And now you're going to hang out with him, not just on Twitter, but in person in Santa Monica. And so we will be sharing the interest link in the chat. If you are interested in attending this event, we are going to put a form into the chat right now, so you can be the first to receive that RSVP link. to attend this event in August. So go ahead and mark your calendars for August 19th in Santa Monica.
Fantastic. That one is going to be incredible. And that one will also be in person. So fill out that form. Now we're going to go to the next one. We have another event. This one will be a split between the Grassroots Democrats HQ and Danica Rome, who is the first transgender member of the House of Delegates in Virginia, who will be running for the state Senate in Virginia. Danica will be coming out to Los Angeles. It will happen to be in my backyard. And I'm really looking forward to hosting this particular event. Anybody here who's interested, who happens to be in Los Angeles for either one of these events, number one, we want you to, in the chat right now, indicate I'm interested in attending. That way you will be the first people that we'll contact to get involved in the fundraisers. But with either one of these events, if you are somebody who wants to help us put the event on, you want to be someone who's helping us to call people to get them to be coming, you want to be a host, you want to be one of the first donors to it, we want to let you know to please let us know at the end of this event. Mana, did I cover it?
You did fabulous.
Great. So now we're going to go on to the next slide. And this one is, everybody take a deep breath. And don't go anywhere, because when we're done with this, we're all going to raise our glasses and toast the amazement of all the work that you do. But if you know me, I have to make a fundraising pitch. I do have a goal. It's a very outside goal, guys, but I don't know who's actually on this Zoom tonight. But I do have a $5,000 goal. And why is that? Because number one, we are at June 30th. We are almost at June 30th. We are halfway through the year. The Grassroots Democrats HQ has a vast program that we are doing. By the end of this year, we better have, I must say, as the person who needs to have a physical space to bring all the team of staff that is working all the time and happens to walk through my backyard and my home, we're going to have a physical site for the work that we're doing. And why else is that important? Because by the end of this year, you all want to be able to, if you live in Los Angeles, to come to a physical site. So we're going to put two different links into the chat. One is going to be for those of you who want to make a donation for all this amazing work that we're doing in Virginia. And the second piece is for those of you who want to be making donations so that we can take back the House in 2024. There are two things the Grassroots Democrats HQ is working on simultaneously. We are an evergreen organization. We are an organization that is here. Think of us like a subway. We never go away. But volunteers and organizations that we partner with, we have over 110 affiliate organizations across the country that work with us. And some of you only do postcarding. Some of you only pick one race to do phone banking on. And some of you, yes, believe it or not, will only canvass, and that is all that you will do. But what we do is we give that gestalt. So what I really want you to do is to please make a donation. Davis has actually corrected me. I am very sorry. Davis, am I right that we have one link for all of these things together rather than two?
Yes, one link.
Fantastic.
My apologies. The slide is a bit confusing, so I take the blame on that one, but it is.
Now, there's no
one
blame,
link.
guys. The Grassroots Democrats HQ is a blameless situation. So you get one link. So this is what I'm going to do. You understand what we're doing. You understand that it takes a team of people to be doing the work. You also understand that right now we are not paying rent any place, and we're going to take this screen down for a second so I can see everybody's faces. I'd like people to raise their hands that happen to be in the Zoom room right now and tell me how many of you have gone to a physical site that is a HQ that you were like, I really liked going to that physical site. When you donate to this, and you can raise your electronic hands, you can put in the chat. When you donate to this, you're making sure that we're saving money so that we can open up that physical site. But what you're also doing is you're giving money to make sure that we can run the phone banks that we have going on. We can fund those young adults that I talked about that we are bringing on to be the paid canvassers. And I didn't even talk about, but you'll find out about it later. The Grassroots Democrats HQ will be uplifting 50 students that we will be hiring come about 1 month from now to be doing phone banking into Virginia. And when they phone bank, they will be calling voters between 18 and 29. That's a huge amount of work. So I'm going to pause before I ask us all to take a photo with our cups. And just to say, if anybody has decided and they're like, of course, I'm going to make a donation. I don't care what it is, guys. If it's the $5,000 donation that makes it so I make my entire goal, go for it. But if you're willing to say, I'm making a donation or I'm making whatever you're making, put it in the chat, because when you do that, it allows people to see that other people are making donations, and it makes a difference. You don't have to say how much. I just want to know that people are doing it. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Do I thank you for what you do to help make us exist? So, and you can also go ahead and put in the chat if you're volunteering. I forgot to ask that one. I do normally ask, but I didn't have a shared screen at the time. Let us know if you're volunteering. So we're going to keep putting in the chat the links to donate, the links to volunteer. If you are generous enough to do either one of those, put it in the chat. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask you all to raise your glass if you have one, to raise a smile, which everybody has one of those. And we're going to take a picture of all of you that were here. You literally have been making the difference for what makes the Grassroots Democrats HQ exist from year to year to year. So here I'm going to take the first screen. Believe it or not, we have so many people still here. By the way, we were up to, I think we had about 96 people in the Zoom room at one time, taking screenshot number 2. And I have one third one that I have to do because we did have so many people here. If you want to turn your cameras on, if they don't have them on, you don't have to, but it is a really nice way for us to remember us all being here at the last screen. Thank you all who have been donating. Thank you all who have signed up. Please share these links out. Our link tree, one thing you can do right now is you can take our link tree, which has both a donation form on it. It has on it volunteer opportunities. Share it out on your social media. Share it out to your friends. There is no reason for people to be in any despair right now. Right now, we are in that avenue of hope. We are in the avenue that we have a time to make a difference in the elections that take place in 2023 and 2024. All we have to do is get people back onto the train to make it happen.